Hello, folks. My name is Jon Buckthorp, and today I'm your host from Vodafone Business into a new series of coffee discussions with Vodafone Business customers from across the world. This series is part of something we're calling Together Ready, which is all about bringing the stories that really impact humans together with technology right now during this crisis, but also into the future. It explores innovation, tips, tricks, and a whole host of support to make your business ready together with Vodafone Business. So I am joined today in this first episode of this series by two experts in their field. This series will bring together senior people from across the world, industry and tech experts, and I'm delighted to introduce two into this call. This is Jon Corner and Dan Sodergren. And I'm just going to bridge out back to them now. And I'm going to ask Jon. Jon, welcome to the call. If you can just introduce yourself to the audience and let us know who and what you do.
Hello, Jon, and welcome. My name's Jon Corner. I'm the Chief Executive of the Landing Media City UK, which is where we are now. So I'm speaking to you from our tech hub on floor 6. The Landing is a massive tech hub in the heart of Media City UK, and in my other role, I'm also Chief Digital Officer for the City of Salford. So I kind of have two perspectives, the tech perspective and how that links into the wider city agenda and the public sector as well. So delighted to join you for this wonderful virtual coffee.
Fantastic, Jon. And I've decided not to use my normal Nescafe. This time I've brewed whole beans and it's smelling. I wish you could smell this, actually. I wish you could smell it. Now, we're also joined by a real tech expert in Dan Sodergren. And Dan, I can see you taking a cup of coffee there. Welcome to the call.
Yeah. Just thought I would. Might as well, eh? Might as well. Hi there. I'm Dan Sodergren, and like Jon was just saying, he has a couple of hats. I also have a couple. I'm a marketing specialist and training around digital transformation for people, but also the future of work. But more importantly for this call, I help the Landing, help tech companies there grow and expand and make the most of this next industrial revolution. I also, as Jon also would know, I don't like to talk about it. I do a little bit of work on the BBC and some Tech Expert 2 stuff as well. So I have a couple of hats. Hopefully I can add some value today while we're having a coffee.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Billy. I appreciate it. And you couldn't bear one moment without dropping in a reference to the BBC, right? So, but thank you for that. I appreciate it. So let's get into the first bit of detail, folks. I'm really interested in this call to talk about the engine room of our global economy, the small to medium enterprise that are really starting to drive things. But before I get into that, I'd like a little bit of an insight to the audience from you guys on how you're adapting to the change through technology. So, Jon, if I can just ask you, what are you up to at the moment with tech?
On a personal level, or in terms of my role? On a personal level, Jon.
Why don't we go for personal? Yeah,
well, I'm used to, like yourself, I'm used to getting out and being very interactive, talking to teams, finding out what's going on in the field, and really engaging with teams and with the community. And I've been in front of my screen in lockdown. Apart from today, I'm in the building today doing a health and safety walkabout. But this is a new world for me in front of a screen. It's kind of an iterative process. On the flip side of that, I've got to know my team better since we've been working remotely. Normally, I would have a 1 week full briefing with everybody, and then I'd be away and I'd be in different towns and I'd be having meetings. But that 1 week briefing has now become a daily briefing. So I've really got to know people's strengths. I've really warmed to how an amazingly talented team I've got, and I've seen people grow in confidence through that virtual iteration, being able to have that quality time with their chief exec. That was a bit of an eye opener and quite an unusual outcome, really, of being locked down.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Jon. I really appreciate that, and I know technology is actually central to what you do. But also, Dan, just turning to you, technology, I mean, you talk about it all the time. You advise small to medium enterprises. You're part of a small to medium enterprise. How's your tech at home really driven what you've been doing recently?
Well, yeah, I've had the joy. I mean, I've been quite lucky because I've been a consultant as well as an advisor for a lot of companies doing digital transformation pieces. So I've been a futurist, for want of a better terminology, for quite a while. And unfortunately, that has meant that I've been somewhat ahead of the game. So I've been saying to people, working from home is going to be the future. You know, make sure you've got the right kit, make sure you've got your Wi-Fi set up properly, your standing desk, and all this stuff. 5 years ago, I was talking about Zoom meetings, when they first started, and everyone thought I was mad and said, well, you have to come down to London. And I was like, no, actually, we can do something called Zoom. So now we're all doing 4 Zoom meetings a day or so. For me, it's almost a positive experience because it's allowed a lot of people to work from home and to get the benefits of remote work. But at the same time, you can see the downside of it. I still think we need to have closeness. It's interesting, today on LinkedIn, they reported that 66% of people find that remote working or working from home, they think they're efficient and effective. It'd be interesting to see what all the bosses say. I know that luckily our boss is very behind it as well. So he just said he got to know the team better and we're doing well. So that's a plus point.
Fantastic. And actually, I found it from my personal perspective, having worked for Vodafone now for 20 years, and apart from about 6 years, I've always worked on the road. But being in my own home has kind of changed the game for me. And I've realized, like John, that you and I spoke about in the past, having that human interaction is something that I've missed. Video has gone some way to get me past that, but it can't really replace the intensity of personal relationships. Now, if I can just move to the first question of the day, and I'm going to go to John first. John, you're at a really important place for the city of Salford and the surrounding area. You're at the Landing, the Vodafone Digital Innovation Lab, actually. And whilst you're there, the mission of that place is to bring small organisations and reduce the barriers, I suppose, to tech. Are you sensing there's a digital divide that's emerging between small organisations and large? It'll just be really interesting to see what you think.
That's a really interesting question. Digital divide. I think there is a digital divide, John, but I don't think it's necessarily between small organisations and large. I think 99% of all business in the UK is SME based. I think where the digital divide may lie is between businesses who are already on the road to digital transformation, who are really embracing digital practices, had actually organised their supply chains in new ways, and companies who are still relying on traditional methods. I think the digital divide lockdown has created a kind of divide for companies who weren't really ready and actually thought through how can they operate in an online world. And I'm seeing, especially in service industries across the city, we're seeing some of those micro businesses really struggling. To go back to your first issue, though, between large companies and small companies, I'm seeing it the other way. I'm seeing a new appetite for co-creation amongst the larger organizations. And Vodafone's a fantastic example of it. And I think this new normal that we're moving into, and I know you want to talk about that later, to me, that offers fantastic opportunities for smaller companies to be able to engage with larger projects and to very agilely, seamlessly work with the large organization. So I see it as an opportunity. I am slightly glass half full, I know, but I do see this lockdown starting to open up new ways, new conversations. There are real world problems. We're seeing an awful lot of companies who are having pipeline projects cancelled. So they've gone to a pitch, they've won a pitch, they were expecting money to land in their account in June, July, and some of those projects have been cancelled. So on a basic financial standing, that there is a divide, there's a disconnect, if you like, and some of those large contracts, those relationships with the larger companies, some of those are in danger. But at the same time, and without labouring the point, I am seeing the new conversations opening up as well around what will the new normal look like? How can we build new processes and new devices and new services and new ways of managing data? And what can SMEs add to that process?
And so that's interesting, actually. You've mentioned the new normal a couple of times in there, actually. Dan, again, I've known you for a while, and that digital divide is an important question. But actually, given your background, maybe it's worth just hitting at that new normal element now, actually. So in terms of new normal, how do you think people are starting to create that new normal? And if you had any sort of opinion on that divide, that'd be cool.
Well, there's digital divide, but only because the situation we're now in, some people say it's a great leveler, but I think it's a great accelerator. It's just accelerated everything that was happening kind of with a logical progression, but it's just happened in 10 weeks is 10 years worth. Now that's unsettling for people, especially if you're a futurist like myself, because you've been saying this stuff happens and then it happens so quickly that you're like, oh my goodness. So it does create a digital divide because industry increasing and this next gear change which we're going through and having to go through does create a digital divide. Unfortunately, it will do. There will be some winners, there will be some losers. So at the landing, for example, we have companies like we have VR360, we've got DigiDentistry, we've got Chris Gowen's great company. They're already working in VR and AR and these future-facing things. At the landing, we're creating the future. And so those companies are very, very well placed because edutech companies that are working and online things that are doing things and things working with 5G, that's the logical progression. It will be happening sooner than we thought. But then you have other companies like there's an HR company, Flock, which I also work with, and they had to pivot from working with recruitment people into a different market, but they had to be really agile to do so. So if you weren't agile enough and you weren't working in tech, then yeah, I could see how this digital divide will happen because the new normal will have as its underpinning electricity, AI, online, 5G. This will be the underpinning of understanding of every business. You'll have to use this stuff. And of course, those companies that can't necessarily and don't have apps and don't have digital stuff already set up, as Jon was saying, especially in the service industries, unfortunately, they're the ones that could be on the wrong side of the divide.
That's interesting. So, and thanks, Dan. Jon, just moving to you on that new normal. I think Dan's teed that quite up. How do you see that new normal for those particular industries start building pace now?
Well, look, our cities are in lockdown, Jon, and Manchester, like other great cities around the UK, is now thinking, how do we build back better? How do we prepare for a return, not just an economic return, but a social return as well? And they know that it can't be. It has to be different. We can't follow the same process. Just moving people around this city, for example, requires a new way of thinking. So what I'm seeing, if we stay on that phrase new normal, what I am starting to detect is a new public sector appetite to manage risk in new ways and a new appetite to fail fast, but also release value fast. And I think that is quite exciting, and that opens up a co-creation agenda as well. I think those plans, those return to work plans, return to life, return to social interaction, get the schools open, get our trams and our transport working again, requires a new set of thinking. And I think the way that small companies can play in that agenda is a real opportunity. There's something else as well. I also see, I'm an evangelist for smart city, connected city technology. And what I am seeing is a new agenda around smart city thinking as well. You'll know, and Vodafone will know as well as anybody, that internationally, the traditional sense of smart city was driven by, or the commercial driver for smart city is driven by, command and control center, having a command and control center of your city, managing your assets, managing your physical buildings, airflow, traffic, air quality, traffic flow. But what I'm starting to see now in the COVID crisis is that smart city agenda starting to bubble to the surface in terms of citizen up solutions. What can we do here and now for our citizens? What are the solutions? How do we how do we manage public transport in a new way? How do we manage social distancing in a new way? How do we do contact tracing? How do we take that new energy that we're seeing in our GP surgeries, that new desire to use video and to do total triage through video? How do we take that to another step? We know the sheer potential of 5G, and we've got a health, a primary care sector that's really discovering the power of video for the first time, but on a very low level. And we know what that potential is. So how do we drive that now? That's the exciting thing, because the challenge for people like me as a CDO was to just get that on the table and get people thinking, hey, we could do things in a different way. I don't have to do that anymore. Now the challenge is, how do we do it quickly, and how do we add value for citizens?
Oh, and I think that's the really exciting thing. No, that's the really exciting thing, isn't it? We've suddenly realised that actually it was a culture change that was needed, and actually it was an external force. Now, it's a horrible shame that it had to be something like this to create it, but in these moments, these horrible moments, we can actually then say, actually, we can get rid of the fixed mindset that we had before, because we don't have time for that now. So you have this massive political change, and it's the political will to do stuff. It's not necessarily the technology. Yeah. The technology has been there for many years. So, the classic saying is the future is everywhere. It's just unevenly distributed. So if you look at other industry, not just health tech, you start looking at how much people are watching esports now more, how much people are using VR stuff now before than they did before. The whole bandwidth is changing. Now, John's got the best point, though, is what Jon was saying is actually it's the political will that's changed. So actually now governments and local governments are saying, wait a minute, why didn't we have this 5 years ago? Now, we have the joy of being at the landing to be able to say, we told you this 5 years ago. We said this is a good idea a couple of years ago. So the digital strategy stuff, we were right. The future worker, this opportunity gives us a real sense that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now, I'm not going to say that this is a big problem. The pandemic is a huge issue, but it also gives us a huge opportunity. And that huge opportunity actually could help generations in the future, not just this one, but for almost generations to come. So the more we can get behind the smart cities and smarter citizens, as Jon's saying, and the health data and that kind of technology, the better it's going to be for the whole world, or certainly the UK. Let's say to start off with.
And I think
Manchester. Sorry, Jon.
No, please.
Manchester. Greater Manchester is quite an exciting place for that, because there is a real consensus. There's a real sense of working together across different public sector organisations, and some of the work that I've been doing in Salford to build that collaboration between public sector organisations, we can actually take some of that thinking and share it now across GMCA, and it feels like a family in a different way. It always has been, but now it's really focused, really concentrated, and the potentials to be able to drive that smart city agenda, I think, are exciting from a tech SME point of view. One thing I will say, though, Jon, is we need to find a different way of bringing our citizens with us in the journey. So it's not just things that we are doing to people. We need to engage them in the conversation, and that's really, really difficult. I don't think that central government communication has been fantastic. I think there's a tension amongst just ordinary folk around what can we do, what can't we do, what's safe, what isn't safe. I'll give you an example. I was in the supermarket queue, in my 2-meter queue on Saturday night, quite late, because I am a late shopper, and I felt slightly out of place because I was the only person not wearing a mask, and so the person in front of me 2 meters ahead was wearing a mask, and this person dropped their mask and sneezed openly into the air, and then calmly put the mask back on. And I thought, well, goodness me, what do they think the mask is supposed to be doing? Yeah. And then, and once I'd got over my initial grumpiness, I started to realize that, do people really know what's going on? Does everybody really know what's going on, and what a virus is, and how we can actually be sensible together? If we're going to cough and sneeze, what's the point of wearing a mask? And we're seeing really stupid things happen in the Northwest region. Over 180 telco engineers have been assaulted. and it's just crazy. And it's just because some people think, well, maybe it's something in the air, maybe it's mobile, maybe it's technology that's driving the virus. And there are real fears, and there's also confusion out there. And I think this new normal, whatever we're working towards on this new normal together, we have to bring our citizens in and say, look, work with us on this. We're going to be altering some environments, and we're going to be introducing technology, and we're going to be introducing data, but it will help to keep us all safe.
Thank you, John.
That was a little bit of a.
I was just wondering. I didn't see you stand on the soapbox, but I think if you haven't moved, so you can see. No, but it was a great point. And as I've just finished the last remnants of my coffee, we're going to go into the last question now. Okay. In this first episode of our series. But one thing, I'm taking what you've just said and what Dan has just said. I think there's a role to play for, let's call them digital advisors, and they can come in a variety of different parts of the world. This is a global series, so we'll hear a lot of things from across the world and how that will manifest. But in the UK particularly, and in Media City, I see the landing and the work that your guys are doing there on behalf of the Northwest economy being part of that digital advisory. You're bringing small organisations together into Floor 6, for example, where Vodafone has got 5G and IoT technology ready to test, and you're bringing expertise to those small businesses. So that digital advisory piece is something I think is going to play a role, and it's probably going to have been accelerated as a result of everything you've just talked about. But I'm just going to ask one final question. I'm going to go to Dan first, if that's okay, Dan. And I'm just going to ask very nice. So I'm just going to say, what piece of tech do you think will be most valuable for a small to medium enterprise at the moment, or at least a focused area?
Okay. From an absolute hardware point of view, and I don't want to do too much of a plug on this, but if you look just on the other side of there you go. You'll see a little box there, which is the 4G and 5G Huawei piece of kit from Vodafone, the GigaCube, I believe it's called. The reason why I'd say that's really key for me personally is it stops things like, well, I'm about to blame my daughter and say it's my daughter's fault that she uses all the bandwidth, or it's my wife's fault. But at the moment, we're sharing all this information together. Yeah, but with the GigaCube, it means that I can actually separate my work stuff and the personal stuff, and that actually means that I can work and I can do things like this without it breaking down. And so for me, I know it's a very basic bit of kit, but actually connectivity has been absolutely key. Without that, the rest of it's a bit of a footnote. So for me, first step forward, get decent connectivity.
And we're seeing that translate across the world, actually, Dan, and many people and organisations that we're working with are saying exactly the same. So again, I'll pass over to John for the same question, that bit of tech that's important for SMEs at the moment.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that connectivity point that Dan's just made. A fifth of UK households are mobile only. And we do hear politicians talking about gigabit connectivity. And I think Boris Johnson said vermicelli into households. But the fact of the matter is our daily working lives are completely dependent upon mobile. So to me, concentrating on mobile tech is a good move, because we can start to use our smartphones and our next generation 5G phones in different ways. It can be a proximity sensor, it can do social distancing, it can do so much. I think that can help to be our guide in this new normal, whatever it is that we're going to be moving into. I think the smartphone and the connectivity that we provide is going to be absolutely crucial. And new ways, new relationships between public and private sector to ensure that everybody can be connected and everybody can afford to be connected. They're the sort of conversations I'm having at the moment, John, around, what are the new business models, city-based business models that ensure the vulnerable people have the same access to connectivity and technology and kit. And that's not just sending devices out. That's actually thinking strategically about, where are the not spots, where are the areas where people aren't connected, and what do we do about it? And what's the business? How can we make that work? And I'm seeing that mindset in the public sector away from, well, is there a market gap? to, well, how do we intervene in a positive way that has social benefit, that has commercial benefits as well. So to me, those business models are key.
Fantastic.
Can I just hit the end? Sorry, because John's just inspired me. The other bit that isn't to do with kit is actually, it is that mindset. I think that is one of the biggest things you can bring into this new normal, is a new mindset. And a lot of businesses don't have that, because they're still going, oh my goodness, when it goes back to normal, we'll all be okay. And I don't think that's where it's going to go. It's going to be a new normal. And actually, we're going to have to build better and build back better. But more importantly, we're going to have to change our minds about stuff and actually not be so rigid and say, okay, maybe we don't have all the answers, but we're going to be fluid enough to take in feedback and not go from down, from the top down all the time. Because I think there's going to be a new way of doing business. We're all going to have to start embracing, where change is the norm, and it comes at you pretty quickly.
Hey, a lovely subject for us to close this initial cup of coffee on, actually, because that new normal creation is the exact arc of what the Together Ready series from Vodafone Business is all about. We're bringing together stories from across the world on how technology is making a real difference today. And if you check out some of the links that are associated to this post, you'll hear from our CEO around how innovation plays a part. You'll hear how a series of experts across Vodafone advise you to get back to work, to rebuild your business, to restart your business in a podcast. And you'll also hear some really cool tech from partners such as IBM and Vodafone working together to really focus on where milliseconds matter. Now, one for you two guys, if you look on the site today, you will see a really good story around MenCat and how we're working together with them to support folks that are most vulnerable with tech at home. And given the social agenda of you guys, I really would suggest that would be a great story for your community at the landing. So finally, before I say goodbye to the guys, the landing in Media City represents a working hub in an actual smart city to test and to learn both 5G and IoT technology. They provide services to small organizations and big alike and congregate them together to co-create for industry. And knowing both of these gentlemen, that is going to be a focus for those organizations more than ever. So firstly, Dan, to you, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. And John, thank you again for everything you've mentioned today. This has been the first episode of the Coffee With series as part of Together Ready. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. All the very best. Cheers.
Take care.